I think we're relatively optimistic about 2025, to be honest. I mean, we have a global footprint. We've got a very strong presence in the US, very big presence in Europe, also presence in Brazil and Southeast Asia. And when I look across the different regions, actually we see good, strong demand for power. At least that's one of the key things, one of the key metrics for us. Clearly that's driven in many cases by the AI boom, the digital. That's a huge source of demand. We're seeing that across the board in the many different regions we're in. And that's a tremendous opportunity. So there are obviously risks and there are obviously policy changes that are being taken. But if you look at the fundamentals are there. Demand is growing and you need to be able to supply that demand. And that's where we come in.
So what are the sectors and geographies where you're seeing the most demand right now? You mentioned the AI trade certainly propelling demand for energy globally, but where else specifically are you seeing opportunity?
So two areas. One in the US. Actually, we see a huge amount of demand in the US, and that continues to be a big driver of our growth. Iberia is also another extremely interesting area. It's got extremely cheap, clean energy. About 71% of Portugal's energy mix is renewables. About 55% of Spain's energy mix is renewables. And so that provides, a tremendous source of good, clean power, cheap, for data centers, for manufacturing, for all of that. So US and Iberia, I think, are two great markets.
Can I also ask you about the cultural shift that we've seen on ESG and in particular climate regulations globally as a result of the push that we've seen from the Trump administration to roll back some of these Biden-era policies? Now, of course, you do a lot of work in the United States, HQ in Houston, of course, or one of your operations in Houston. What do you think this means globally now that we see the United States essentially leaving the room when it comes to the global climate conversation? Will that impact the business?
I think the climate conversation to a big extent is also driven by things like energy independence and energy security and things like affordability. And so the climate piece is a very important part of it, but there are these other pieces as well. And these have become even more relevant over the last couple of years. In Europe, given the war in Ukraine, suddenly energy independence and stopping being reliant on Russian gas became extremely relevant. So being able to produce energy in Europe, whether it's using wind or solar, using batteries, all of that allows you to become more energy independent. And so the climate discussion or the ESG discussion really is much broader than just a pure CO2 emissions. It's, the drive for the energy transition is about these three pillars, and those are all very important.